Welcome back to the 7-Minute Takeover, where we chat all things acquisitions. I'm your host, Liz MacRae, and today I'm joined by Madison Clohessy, who recently acquired Urist Cosmetics just outside of Vancouver. It's a private label skincare manufacturer, and this episode comes to us by request from one of our members who asked, can you please have Madison on to talk about the first 100 days of ownership? So we're hoping that you'll get a bit of a candid look at what it's like to step into new ownership today. So thank you for being here with us, Madison.
Hi, yes, thank you, Liz.
So let's just jump in. What is the origin story of how this acquisition came about? What drew you to acquire Urist in the first place?
Right, yeah. So my dad and I operate EGP Capital. And so we have previously acquired a manufacturer business in the insulated glass unit space in Kelowna, BC. And so I joined that business with him around the actually 100-day mark, probably just close to that. And I focused on the operation side, and it was about 6 months in that we looked at adding another business. And so we wanted to keep it within the B2B space. We wanted to still stick with manufacturing. We looked for a long-standing business. Urist has been in business since 1948.
Oh, wow.
So a long-standing one on that one. And then it just fit within all the parameters. And so we went forward with it, and we took over May 1st of this year.
So it's a little bit unique. You have a little bit of perspective, this being acquisition number 2. And so you knew kind of what to expect to a degree, but what was going through your head? Take us back to that first day when you closed Euris and what that looked like.
Right. That was a big day. I remember I had just kind of woken up, and you're going to walk into the business. And so I had previously, before we kind of entered the business on that day with the owner, we had some coffee. He was looking to keep the kind of family torch alive. And so not being able to pass it on to his own family, but being a second generation, he wanted to have that with me. So I remember going into meeting him, and it's everything, but you're also just focused on going in. You want to meet the team, you want to get to know people right away, you want to see, and then at the same time, you're still very much involved in closing the deal itself. And so I remember we walked in, we had a nice staff meeting, got to see everybody, and then I immediately actually went down into our production lab and started inventory count. So making sure and verifying that every single raw material is there and it's usable. And I was then working closely with our 2 production staff right away, who actually the whole staff only just found out on that day that we closed that there would be new ownership. So you have a lot of kind of emotions and surprise flying around, but you just want to be there as a steady foundation that you're confident and you're there and you're optimistic and enthusiastic for what's about to come. And you can carry that kind of torch from the old owner.
And how did they respond to that initial announcement?
I think there was definitely surprise. I mean, there's only so much surprise, though, that the previous owner was, of course, at an age of retirement. So I think there was always kind of a speculation there, but there was just kind of, I think, a genuine shock. But I think at the same time, it was balanced with a reassurance that there would be some new blood in the business. So I think that evened it out, that the staff were ready for a change, and they were almost engaged and excited to see somebody come in and who was going to, kind of modernize the business and take it over. So I think there was an even kind of spread between the 2.
Oh, that's good. So they were kind of prepared in some way, shape, or form, but almost indirectly.
Right. Yeah. So
yeah.
It was a mix. It was a complete mix.
It's a mix. Okay. Well, it sounds like you survived that initial.
Yes.
And so what surprised you most about operating the business when you did step in?
Oh, that's a good one. I think, to be very truthful, there was a surprise about just kind of the dated ways that they were keeping their information, their IT, their data management. They do not have an ERP system. And so some of those shocks that you get that you don't actually know, right? Their day-to-day operations before you step foot in there. And so just those small realizations there of just how the everyday operations in the production were running came as a little bit of surprise. But then with every surprise with that, you almost see opportunity, and you see, okay, well, I want to understand this more, but I already have 1,000 ideas of how we could change this. And obviously not right away, but in the back of your head, you're seeing these small surprises and just thinking, okay, well, we could do this. And it just leaves so much room for opportunity. And so I think those were a lot of the surprises, is just having the business operating a little bit in the last century. And so some of those small shocks, especially being like a younger individual walking in there and seeing some of those, was definitely a surprise. But I mean, without going into too much detail, it's been an opportunity even in the first 100 days to just switch some of the even email structure or simple things like that.
Yeah, little things every day, I'm sure.
Yes.
And would you say that might have been the hardest problem when you took over ownership, or was there anything else that stands out as being, the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome right away?
I think that is definitely a large portion, the way it was kind of just operationally structured, and the previous owner had a large hold on very specific kind of roles that all tied back to that previous owner. And so just kind of uncovering that and seeing where you want to fit into that was definitely a hard part to navigate right away, because all of a sudden, depending on how that transition goes, you are that replacement. And whether you want it to look exactly like that or not, you kind of have to then navigate right away of what you're going to take on or what you found to kind of change the structure. So I think that was a large one. I remember also it comes down even to the little things where we have shipments going into the US. And so we had a shipment held up with the FDA. And so that's within your first couple of days being there, you're still trying to get the lay of the land. And before this, I've had no personal dealings with the FDA. So all of a sudden, there actually hadn't been an issue like that, I think, even at all. So the previous owner didn't have much advice to give. And so it's hopping on, it's finding who's the contact, getting on the phone. I ended up having a great conversation with the agent, explaining to me. And so you just have to dive in really headfirst on every issue that you find. And most of the times, even then, when you're new to the industry, everything is a learning opportunity. Now I've had that conversation. I understand they conduct the random sampling and proceed it through, and you wait and you get X amount of notices. So you can find an issue and then you dive in right away, and you've got this knowledge that might have taken you a year or two to even learn their procedure.
Had that not happened otherwise. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it, to see that, here's this obstacle and it's actually a learning opportunity. I love that you positioned it that way.
Every little thing can be, especially when you don't have that industry side knowledge, everything is a learning opportunity.
And I like that you kind of spoke to, when the old owner's there and looking at their role and going, am I going to position my role as the same way that they had? It's almost like you're unraveling them from the company and then rebuilding your role for yourself.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Exactly. Because in some circumstances, you do want to hold that same role and responsibility. And then in others, you may not even have the expertise to hold that same role or responsibility. So you really have to shift that out fast. And then I find you definitely have to understand everything that old owner may have been doing, because sometimes you won't hear it come across that you're not doing it anymore, or that somebody may not speak up. And so you're like, well, who was, holding that? Oh, that actually should be me right now. And so to really be on top of that, I found was important, depending, your expertise level in different areas that's needed.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so what was your approach to, when you speak to dealing with the employees, what was your approach to stepping into a leadership role when the change happened?
I think the main philosophy was to keep everything the same, keep people certain that there wouldn't be a tremendous amount of change right away, get to know people besides them being your employees, but get to know them wholly. And I think mainly in the leadership was just seeking to understand. A lot of times you can fall short of understanding all the way, and then you want to make a change, or you don't quite understand it and you want to divert. So I think really it was just to understand everything that goes on in the business from A to Z fully, and just seeking to understand in that way, I think has been a large part that's helped that integration process. Yeah, I think overall the team has been great. And they, again, like I said, wanted that new energy, and they've been so welcoming. So that's really just given a perfect relationship in that sense as well.
That's wonderful. And that's great advice. Thank you for sharing that, Madison. So looking back, last question, looking back, what advice would you give to someone who's about to take over their first business?
That's a big one. I think you have to be ready for just about anything to happen. And if you're not ready for that, then you may have a whole lot of stress and worry, and not where you're ready and prepared and you have procedure written out for what happens in this case or what happens in this case, but you're mentally, and you almost just have this capability to be okay with X, Y, or Z may happen. And so I think that's a large one of just being okay with that, because you are not in control of everything. Yeah. And that's one thing that I really had to let go of. I like to take control. I like to have perfection. And so you are now at an organization that you are not, have your hands on absolutely everything. And especially in the first 100 days, you don't know everything to even have your hands on it. So I think that would be a large
that's great advice. That's really valuable advice. I think a lot of people out there can probably relate to. I like to know what's happening. I like to control the circumstances if I can, and to just have to let that go and go, I'm going to deal with whatever comes my way. I know we had another member who closed last week, and I think day 2 the air conditioning unit broke, and it's 33 degrees out these days, and that was one of the obstacles they had to manage on day 2.
Exactly. Like it could be anything. And so, you don't have to be prepared, but you just have to be accepting that, and just having the knowledge that anything could. It's not certain. And I think the other bigger part is making decisions without all the information. I think that's a large one, that you will not have all the information, especially in those first 100 days. You can't, and you won't on a lot of things. And so it's to make the decision with enough, humble confidence that I'm going to make the decision. And if I get new information tomorrow, I may or may not be able to change that decision, and it doesn't reflect poorly on my leadership. But you just have to be progressing, because you can make maybe a wrong turn, but if you do that sooner on, then by the time you're 5 days later or whatnot, you can even change it, instead of just procrastinating and waiting will really stall you up. So I think that is also another big one.
That's fantastic. I love that. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It sounds like
that's it. There's a lot of that.
A lot of that. Well, thank you so much for being here, Madison. It's been a pleasure to speak with you and get your update and hear how things are going. I know we follow along closely at Village, and congratulations again to the second acquisition.
Yes, thank you, Liz. We'll maybe be back on day 365 for an update.
That would be great. Yes, let's do that. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.